Strap on your boots and get ready to kick some alien butt back to whatever planet it came from. We're taking a quick peek at Xeno Crisis. Xeno Crisis is a top-down arena shooter that's been compared a lot to something like Smash TV. It's fast, frantic, and full of all kinds of arcade goodness. It's the second game by developers Bitmap Bureau after their 2D platformer 88 Heroes, and the version you see here is technically not the original version of the game, but a port. In 2017, the devs set up a Kickstarter to not only make a game, but make it as a faithful recreation of the kinds of stuff you'd see on the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis back in the day. The devs were so sold on this idea that the original version of the game backers were paying for were actual physical cartridges made to work with the old consoles. While they had some experience working with the hardware, having made the shoot-'em-up Fatal Smarties for a game jam in 2016, this would be their first time really diving in deep. But the public was very interested in the idea. It didn't take long for Xeno Crisis to get fully funded, and at the end of its Kickstarter campaign, the project had raised 362% of its £20,000 goal, totaling to £72,596, or 93,650 cold hard US dollars with 22 cents on the side. Being a port of a game designed for a legacy console such as the Mega Drive means that its PC version has some annoyances to go with it. The game is totally keyboard driven, with no options to use the mouse, even in menus. It also lacks any kind of rebindable keys, which I found to be a real problem. By default, players move around with the arrow keys and shoot with WASD, and it just feels unnatural. At this point in time, I'm very used to WASD being movement keys for action games, and trying to retrain my brain on the fly just wasn't working for me at all. Luckily, the game does come with native controller support for modern controllers, and I'd really advise using one if you happen to have one on hand. The plot of Xeno Crisis is about as basic as you'd think it is. Players take on the role of a Marine sent to Outpost 88, nice 88 Heroes reference there, devs, and are tasked with killing everything that isn't human while saving anyone who may still be alive. That is until you start running into humans that are trying to kill you, which is where things get kinda confusing. Story is only told through small static images in between levels and at the start of the game before the main menu, but I still found it kinda hard to follow. You start out killing what are thought to be aliens, since Xeno is a phrase usually used to refer to aliens. But at one point you interrogate one that speaks some kind of Earth language so the main characters can understand it. Then as you move through the outpost level by level, you find yourself in a lab full of zombies and dudes in hazmat suits, followed by some fancy mansion-type place. At one point, you even pay a collect call to Cthulhu himself, so there's something really bad going on here. Human or not, enemies still die when you pump enough bullets into them, and that's really what Xeno Crisis is all about. This is the kind of game where if you want to stay alive, that means you gotta stay on the move. Enemies pop out of just about anywhere they can, be it doorways or dropping down out of thin air, so standing still is a death sentence. Just holding down one of the directional buttons or tilting the analog stick will spray bullets downrange in that direction, but it can be a bit finicky on its own. To stick to the authenticity of an older game, player characters can only fire in 8 directions total, so you have to move around in order to make up for the missing angles. Also, because you only got so many bullets. For some odd reason, the basic automatic rifle gun thing the Marines use has an ammo limit, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why. Sure, there's a melee button that can be used if the gun runs dry, and while it happens automatically by getting close enough to an enemy, it's on a bit of a cooldown timer, making it very easy to take some damage while trying to get a stab in. There are also grenades for dealing with groups of more powerful foes, and it makes sense why those would be limited for balance. Generally, for games like this though, the stock basic weapon has infinite ammo, so players don't get stuck in a crappy situation that they can't get out of. Thankfully, the game seems to automatically drop an ammo box whenever players start running out, which seems to kind of contradict the idea of having limited ammo in the first place. Although, you do still gotta get to the dang thing. And that's where rolling comes in handy. Players can roll in any direction they can walk in, and it seems to be that they are immune to damage while doing so. It's a good way to get across the screen for grabbing health, ammo, or grenades while avoiding damage, and there isn't really any kind of downside to doing it. Rolling can also be a good offensive move, as it'll break the glass shields some later enemies carry on hit, leaving the squishy enemy that was holding it very vulnerable to bullets. Mastering the dodge roll is how you master staying alive, which always made me feel like an idiot when I forgot it existed in the first place. Like many older games, Xeno Crisis not only has a health system, but also a lives system, or continues as they're called here. Just like in the arcade days, take too much damage and you're down another quarter, but there are ways to get more if need be. Enemies will sometimes drop dog tags when you turn them into bits, and tags can be exchanged for upgrades or continues between levels. I don't know how many were supposed to be stationed at Outpost 88, but the Xenos drop a lot of tags and do so constantly, which means they must have killed a lot of people. A lot doesn't mean all, and sometimes there'll be hostages ripe for the rescuing. Saving them only seems to award points, but there's no reason not to grab them when you can, though I'm honestly not sure if they can die. Enemies don't seem to target them, but I'm almost certain I saw one get killed at some point, but I can't quite be sure. Other important things to grab while you're going around dealing with anything that wants to murder you are more weapons. While your basic automatic weapon can only be upgraded between levels to become more powerful or carry more ammunition, weapon drops constantly stay powerful for as long as they last. Unlike the base gun, they have infinite ammunition, but are only around for a short period of time, so be sure to hold down the trigger and make the most of them while you can. There's everything from a rocket launcher that blows things up real good to a flamethrower that sadly doesn't come with any barbecue sauce. You've also got more basic weapons like a shotgun, as well as the powerhouse of the BFG. That is, if you can get the dang thing to work well for you. Unlike every other weapon in the game, the BFG only fires when you let go of the shoot button instead of pressing it, as its shots have to charge, and while it can be devastating, it can really take some getting used to. Overall, Xeno Crisis is great for some arcade action if that's the kind of thing you're looking for. Its levels are randomly put together every time you start a new game, and what pickups that show up change as well. There's a whole lot of replayability here, but not everything is sunshine and rainbows. The game has both 1 and 2 player modes along with a hard and easy difficulty option. It's very obvious that the devs built the thing from the ground up with 2 player in mind due to just how much stuff they throw at you. Playing alone can lead to being overwhelmed rather quickly, and playing on hard mode can be an absolute nightmare at times. With 2 players, if one of you happens to go down, you can be revived by the other one, something that obviously can't happen when there's only 1 player on the screen. This means that a continue is only used if both players die at the same time, whereas with 1 player, it's very likely you'll see the game over screen a lot more often. There's also a bit of a pacing problem, as some levels like the dunes and forest feel like they drag on and on and on as you progress room by room, full of multiple waves of things to shoot at. Enemy shots are also small and rather difficult to see at a glance, and sometimes the things can even spawn right on top of you, which sucks since health can be very difficult to find. And I honestly found the main part of the level to be a heck of a lot more difficult than any of the bosses I had to fight at the end of it. Even old Squidface himself. Continues can only be increased by purchasing an elixir from the upgrade menu between levels. But there's a real big catch. You see, all the way at the end of the game, when you finish the final level and are gearing up for the final boss fight, Xeno Crisis shows you one of two endings. Either A, you get to fight the boss, or B, you get killed in a cutscene and sent back to the main menu. What determines which ending you get is if you used a continue or not. That's it. In order to actually fight the final boss, you not only have to beat every level to get to it, but also do so without using a continue once. And that is just ridiculous. It's something that's a lot easier to do with two players with the reviving mechanic, but one player doesn't have that, so it's a real pain in the butt. I understand the devs are going for some old school difficulty here, but it's just a flat out mean thing to do, especially since continues are very expensive to buy and nothing at any point tells you that it's a waste, because if you lose one, you might as well restart the entire game all over again. Getting to the final boss fight in the game can be difficult enough, and being given a game over regardless of how much health or how many elixirs you still have at that point is just salt in the wound. The devs explained in a post on the game's Steam discussion section that they did this to help differentiate their game from other games and to get players to rethink and change how they play. But for someone like me, it just put me off wanting to play the thing altogether. Many games have bad endings, and there are a good amount of arcade titles that hide extra secret bosses behind these kind of stipulations. But generally, you still get some kind of ending and aren't just given a game over right out of nowhere. You get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir! It's a massive load of crap that hurts the overall product, in my opinion. While Xeno Crisis can be a lot of fun with some great gameplay, background music, and does a great job recreating the art design of the time period it's trying to go for, it's just got too many odd decisions that can cause it to feel overall unfair at times. Having to deal with the game's difficulty and randomization is challenging and enjoyable enough on its own, but being punished for not playing almost perfectly cuts a bit too deep in my opinion. If you're a fan of chaotic arcade action, then there's a lot to get out of the game, and I would recommend you check it out. But just keep in mind that you may end up like me and be dissuaded from wanting to play more due to some of the unfair punishment. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think of the game or this video in the comment section. I'm MegapieMan, and I'll talk to you guys later. Want to see more of my stuff? Click on the video on the left for a quick peek at Dark, a 2.5D puzzle platformer that challenges you to see things differently than usual. Or click on the video on the right for Rack Exoverse, a first-person shooter mixed with tower defense.